Hey, Professor K here. And now that we've got all our HTML roughed out and we've got our styles.css connected, it's time to start roughing out CSS. Now, what do I mean by roughing out? There's a lot of detail in mockups. There's a lot of fidelity. And one thing that can be kind of overwhelming is trying to bring yourself from this real basic HTML all the way to this really high fidelity, beautiful mockup. And it can be hard to figure out where to start. So if you're stuck and you're not sure where to start, I like to start from the bottom up. So from the mobile wireframe up or mockup up, because mobile's the simplest, right? And the next approach that I take is roughing something out. And by roughing out, I mean just kind of like placing the large colors and layout in as quickly as I can. This is actually really similar to painting. If you've ever taken a painting class, what do you start with? You start with a rough sketch. You start roughing out and blocking in big areas of color and then put in the fine fidelity details later. So what's like a fine fidelity detail here? This tilt, right? Tilting the title. This shadow on the title, the font face, these sorts of relationships between this background stopping here and this overlap. Those are all fine, high fidelity details, the changes in color between the list items. We're not going to worry about that today. Today is all about just roughing out the layout and getting some basic colors down. So let's give this a try. Let's see what we can start with. The first thing that I want to do is I want to make sure that this image is never larger than the viewport, the page. So here I've done an image width equals 50%. I actually want this to be the full width of the page. So I'm going to do image width equals 100%. There we go. There's also max width. And what that means is that it will go no larger than 100%. I would actually recommend that in general, just because then it won't stretch your image out if it's not large enough. So that's a good general rule for images, is we never want them to break out of the container. So we're going to leave this on the image element. There's a number of different ways that you can select things in CSS. One is selecting by element or tag. And to do that, all you have to do is write the tag name, the same one that you use in index.html. So that's a good starting rule. What else do we need here? Well, one other big rule that we could write is what the type size should be. So generally when defining rough typography, you always want to do it on the body tag. And that's because typography scales based on the size of all the type in the body. So we're going to define this on the body tag, again, using the element selector for body. And what was our type size in Adobe XD? Let's find out. I'm going to pop back into our mockup and just select this. And we're going to see that it's 18 pixels. So here, we are just going to define this as 18 pixels. Oops. And you know what I didn't do? Font size, 18 pixels. Oh, and you can see it got a little bit bigger in my preview. Excellent. Now, this is going to look a little funky in comparison with our mockup here. One, because we're not at 100%. And two, because this is using a different typeface. So this will even out as you go. But right now, just rough styles, really global stuff. Rough idea of where we're ending up. Recipe for disaster is in the right place. We're going to skip that. What's a recipe? Also in the right place. We're going to skip that. We're going to keep going until we find something that's not in the right place or looking correct. So one thing here I'm seeing, one big kind of rough area I can rough out is this ingredients area. I want to be able to easily see what my ingredients area is so that when I go to lay it out, I understand where it's falling in the page. So because ingredients is different, it's styled differently from directions, it has its own CSS class. Remember that when we went through our HTML, we went through and added all of these classes, right? Class equals, even class equals recipe on the body tag. So we had a recipe intro, which is where we're going through, and now we want to style the background color of these ingredients. So to help write that rule, we're going to identify in our HTML which element goes with this piece of the mockup. And if I take a look at this and I start reading through, this is where this ends. And I know that my recipe ingredients section this is what I want to style. I want the background color around everything. So in CSS, to write a selector is going to be this part, right? The piece that selects the HTML. You can select an element, but today we want to select a class. We want to select the class, right? We know because of the attribute, recipe ingredients. So I'm just going to copy my recipe ingredients so I have it easy to access. And in my styles.css, I'm going to write a class selector. Class selectors always start with a period. So period, recipe-ingredients. And I'm going to pop open my preview again too so that we can see what's going on here. Space, opening and closing curly braces. And now I want to give this a background color. So let's do background color. And again, we're roughing things out. We're testing things out. We don't need to necessarily have the exact background color in here. So I'm just going to rough it out with red. It doesn't have to be the same red, but I want to see where this lines up. And now I can see that the red starts with ingredients and ends at the end of ingredients. So it encapsulates this whole section, and it's kind of the right sort of relationship. Perfect. So I got that right. Now, one thing that I don't like is that I wanted a white background behind the ingredients themselves. So let's go back into our HTML and take a look at what that class would be. All right, so we have recipe ingredients title, that's this here. And then next we have recipe ingredients list. That is what's over in here. And I can see because it starts with one project and it closes after a very important person, just like in the mockup. So we're in great shape. That's what we want to select. Now, what do? We write a class selector. So remember, how do we write a class selector? Period, recipe ingredients list, 2 curly braces. And again, I'm going to show this next to the code just so we can see. And our goal is to get this to have a background color of white. So background-color, white. And let's take a look. Awesome. Now this has a background color of white. We can double check this, that this is still kind of encapsulating this area by putting a padding on. That's what I like to do. So I'm going to put on padding 10 pixels. We're going to go more through the exercises go through the box model and how that works. But basically what's happening is recipe-ingredients is pushing the content in using padding. Padding pushes content in. It's kind of like unapparent. So that's how you can tell that this is still all encapsulating this. So continuing with our rough styles, again, we don't necessarily care about the exact placement, the exact order of things. We just want rough styles in. And we know from our second and third mockups that one of the big rough styles we wanted was a blue background on directions. And again, specific background color, we're not going to worry about it right now. We're just roughing out the styles. So how do we find the background? Well, if you've named this in a way that helps you remember exactly what the element is, this is recipe directions, right? So if you know what the class name is, you don't have to go checking the HTML all the time. You could just write it, recipe directions. And again, always using the class selector. There are other selectors in CSS, but in general, the class one is the one that you'll use most. We're going to do a background color of just a generic blue. Sweet. All right, so we've got that, that's working, and we've kind of roughed out what that says. So one thing that you're going to notice is that it looks like some stuff is getting cut off, even though we said that we don't want images to be any more than 100% of the width. Why does this happen? This happens because of the box model. So the box model basically determines how the width of something in your CSS is going to be calculated. And by default, the width of something includes the border, the padding, and the actual width. So one thing we can do real quick here is select everything. That's a star selector. And even if you don't understand the box model yet, you can put this rule at the top of your page to help you along with your CSS. So why is my width all funky? Why are things getting cut off? Just put this rule at the top of the page and see how it affects things. So we're going to do box model border dash box. that says include the border in the box. Now it's still getting cut off, but at least we know that it's not a box model problem. All right, so next in roughing out our CSS, we are going to want to make sure that I'm seeing that our title here in ingredients and in directions, it would be great to have that as white. So here we're going to do recipe, and remember we're working with the ingredients component first and then title. Remember we named all titles title, and then we're just gonna say not background because text, well, let's try background first. What happens with background dash color white? What if I made it a white background? Uh-oh, it's the actual background of the box. And notice it stretches the full width. That's not what we wanted. We wanted to change the color of the text. So what's a different rule we can use? Well, try doing what you said. If you talk it out, you'll usually accidentally say the CSS rule without realizing it. Change it to color, and now you've got the proper color on it. So let's take this thing that we just learned and go to recipe directions title and do color white. Perfect. Looking much better. Now, if you're like me and you're like, oh, this is way too far, you could try a different keyword like teal. It doesn't really matter. Again, just roughing out. Don't worry about the colors too much just now. This is more for understanding the layout and how things are working. Okay, so next up we have our directions list. And I'm just going to refer back to my HTML. I'm going to kind of make this bigger so that I can see a little bit better what's going on. Just make this a little bit smaller so that we have this to the side. And I want to take a look and remember what this was. Now you could, if you don't want to go back and forth between the HTML, you could use inspect element to decide this. So inspect element is actually going to allow you to see what your HTML was. So that could even be a faster way of figuring out what you want to select. So here I want to make the background of my card, this part, this whole thing white. So how do I do that? I can just right click, inspect element, and I'm just going to remember what was it I called that, right? So here's my recipe directions cards. That's the whole section. And that gives me some information by hovering over it. One thing that I can see is that there is like some purple pad. There's some like grid lines when I go to inspect it. And there's like this like chunk of purple on the left side. I don't know if you can see that, but like if I like looking over here, I can see that there's something going on there. One thing you can do at this point is just hit layout, and if you hover over any of these values, it'll give you a better sense of what exactly is going on and what CSS property it goes with. So this is great for troubleshooting this like nonsense that browsers throw in just to help style things. We can see, oh, what's next to this 40 value here? Padding. You can even change this right in line. You can just test it out and say 0, and whoa, already that is looking much more like what's going on in my cards. So now that I've done that, what I want to do is I want to actually add that rule back to my CSS. Now that I've kind of played around with it and like, oh, that's rule's really helpful. I'm going to double click, copy this class, close out of developer tools, and I'm just going to go and what am I working on? Recipe directions. I like to keep things in a nice order. This is below the recipe directions title, and this is a class of recipe directions cards. And oh crap, what was that? What was that I needed? What was that rule? Well, I lost it. Whoops, I forgot. Let's go to inspect element and just kind of pop back in there again and double check. So this wasn't it. This wasn't it. It was one more up. And oh, right, it was padding. So to override that, we're going to write padding 0. Scroll down. Oh, real simple and easy. Much better. Okay, getting back to my background of the cards here, I remember that each card is just card. That's how I wrote these classes up. And I'm going just to do a background of white. And check that out. We're getting somewhere here. Now this is interesting. Take a look and see how there's like this blue line between each card. Why is that happening? Why do you think that might be happening? Well, one thing you'll see is that directions has a blue background. Now, there's nothing in recipe directions card to say that there should be blue here. So where is this coming from? Well, let's take a look and inspect element. And let's just with this card, write one rule on the element. I want to test something. And I'm going to give it an opacity. I want to see if something underneath is affecting this. So opacity 0.5. And check that out. The blue is behind it. We're seeing the blue through this. It's not part of this. So that means that the blue is coming from our directions, recipe directions. And you can see the background color is blue. If you went to change it, see how all of that changes at the same time. So what might be happening here? Why is there this space here? Well, how did we figure out that we needed to take out padding over here? How did we even identify what might be going on here? You don't have to know the CSS property yet. You don't have to know what it's called. You just have to know where to look to find the information. So where did we look before? Well, the first thing we did was we took a look at the piece of HTML that we think is affected. I think it's recipe directions card. That's my guess. And I'm going to go to layout and I'm just going to look and see, oh, my guess was wrong. Look at that. It's not recipe directions card that's causing this. There's no extra margin. There's no extra padding. It's zeros everywhere. Okay. So how would I figure this out? Well, I could just start clicking and watching this layout and, see, okay, well, what's happening? Ha! Look at this. Look at this P tag. This has a margin on it. And if you change it to 0, suddenly it's gone. So now we know that we need a style, recipe directions card description, to remove that. So let's just add that right in. .recipe directions card description. Margin was what we were working with. And specifically, let's do margin 0. Let's keep our styles really simple. Now, I'm not really loving this because it did get rid of the blue bar, but it also got rid of the spacing above it. You can choose to adjust something like the margin or the padding, any of those types of properties to apply to all 4 sides of something by adding a dash, and we just want to affect the bottom. There's also top, left, and right. And when I go back over here, now I can see that space is back in. So that's looking much better. So that's how you kind of start beginning to rough out your CSS styles. That's how you start making some changes that really start getting you closer to the mockup. And as you go through here, again, we're not going to worry about the details just yet, but what we are going to do is we're going to just try and identify where things are changing. And you might notice that there's some different layout here. We need the directions to be 50% of the width. So we're going to get into that part in the next video. But for now, just focus on that mobile view, roughing things out, and get that kind of set in and looking nice. Because what we'll do is we'll then figure out how to bring in the right colors and the right typography for the mobile view. So with that, I will see you in just a moment.